Yeah, it's going to be a no on this yes welder. Wow, check that out though. This has got to be the most robust and nicest wire feed mechanism I've ever seen in a welder. Really nice parts on this thing. I'd almost bet this has sintered gears and not plastic. Hey, what's up, fellas? Just got done dissecting the yes welder. The company who makes these things sent me this welder and asked me to do a review on it. And I just couldn't bring myself to do it. The thing's a piece of junk. They wanted like 450 bucks for this thing. And it's got some serious problems. But one of the biggest problems of all is that it only performs about as good as a $100 welder. And when the company goes out of business, you're screwed. You're not going to be able to find spare parts for this thing. Like that's the connection for the gun. Pretty complex setup. The biggest problem with this tool is that it does not have wire speed feed control. It tells you it does in the advertisement, but when you get the welder and find out that you can't do overhead welding, like if you wanted to weld a bead underneath here in a stationary object, forget about it. This thing can only weld in a flat position. That's about it. So the weird thing about this welder, fellas, is you'll find a bunch of people reviewing this welder. Go check it out. It's kind of comical to see them endorsing this piece of crap. And I feel sorry for anyone that went out and spent 400 bucks on this thing. Unfortunately, I got mad at the thing and I threw it. Because I was in the middle of a hot weld on a side job. Had to try to do some, I found a leak in this machine as it was running, so I tried to weld it as it was running. Had another one under here somewhere, like a leak up in here. So I tried to weld it while this machine was running, and so we were down to the wire. I was getting way too hot on hours, and this thing just wouldn't perform for me. So I got a little upset and accelerated the object. I'm gonna have to turn this into something. I'm gonna take this apart and see if it has sintered gears in it. Too bad, guys. Some properly greased metal sintered gears. I believe these things are made by a press and then they're cooked, or they're 3D printed. But for the most part, I think they're a powder composition that's pressed. This here is like a $1,000 welder. And you can see just how important wire speed actually is. I've got stuff wrote all over this thing, but for the most part, I would not suggest this for a beginner whatsoever. It's too expensive, and it's kind of being touted as a beginner's welder. It's got a bunch of women welding in tank tops. Yeah, see how that works out for you. But I just wanted to show you guys a little bit on this transformer. I'm curious as to what else I could use it for, because I'm certainly not going to use it to do any welding. Yeah, I would just get a Lincoln Electric buzz box with the big old copper transformer. I think the reason they do this is because it's cheaper than making a big fat transformer, because you would need a transformer almost as big as this deck to make a regular DC transformer, because you also need a choke as well. You would need a choke about as big as a Mont. So, I don't know, that's where I'm at. I promised these people I would do a review on their product. And this is it. I'm telling you, don't buy this thing. I can't believe they're wanting $450 some for it. Not trying to like beat these guys to death, but if you're gonna pirate a product, you know, like, and there's hundreds of different companies making these things. They were trying to promote this as a beginner's welder. And I'm a fairly good welder, and I couldn't get the thing to do what I wanted it to when I needed it. So it ended up getting broke, but it was like 14 hours into that day. It was a long day, and I didn't have time for some junk welder to not be able to do a simple overhead weld. I needed to weld a bead this big, you guys, to keep that machine from leaking. It was the only thing I could string across the job site that far. All this other stuff's anchored down. The machine's running. There's fire coming out of the top of it. I'm like, damn it. And it was a big no on the yes welder. So I thought the least I could do is take it apart. For any of you guys who think you might want to buy this thing, you know, I really can't imagine why. I hate these inverter welders, and I think the only reason they build them is to get out of having to spend the money on the copper to build a real transformer. And they don't have the same arc force that you get out of the transformer. It's a very fizzy, like just kind of fuzzy weld. But I feel like with a good transformer, you get that actual arc force that penetrates and it pushes the weld, and you can spray and all this other stuff. Like this thing here is a totally different beast. This has a big fat transformer inside of it. Now, why didn't a good company who wants to make a good product go with this crap if it wasn't the way to go? I'm pretty sure it's just a way of getting out of providing a decent transformer. And it does produce an inferior weld. I had a really good welder tell me that you guys have seen this old thing here. Remember that old inverter welder? A good welder told me that these inverter welders lack arc force and that they cause porosity in the welds, and that when you do an acid test, they will fail the weld test. So I have not done a weld test on this thing, but a notable welder told me that these inverter welders are very known for that. And that's probably why this thing is an inverter welder, because you have to be able to weld on a job site. I would imagine they don't put these things out on a job site where you have to weld the code. Yeah, it can melt some metal and make a puddle and all that, but what got me mad was it says it has wire feed speed control. It's even got an option when you're pressing through the buttons, and you can set the wire speed on 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatever. It's some stupid arbitrary number. And it's not like inches per minute like, you know, maybe it should be. But anyway, and you would set it, and it's the same freaking wire speed. So I sat here and wasted a half hour of my time before I finally realized this damn thing does not have a wire speed. So I contacted the company. I'm like, look, I can't get the wire speed to work on this thing. And their synergy drive, it has synergy drive, and you don't need to set the wire speed because the computer senses the speed of the wire that you need. But for some reason, overhead welding is out of the question. So, not to be offensive or knock anybody or make fun of anybody, but man, this thing sucks. And I say that because of the Shill videos I had to watch. You know, I thought maybe it's a good welder. Maybe, you know, if it's a good welder, I could use a piece of free equipment. Right on. You could never weld like thin wall tubing with this thing. Nothing. You can weld pieces of metal this thick, maybe splatter some like 1/4-inch steel with this. That's about all. It'd be good for some of that, and you wouldn't be passing any acid tests with it, I don't think. But I could be wrong. I have not officially acid tested this. I'm going off what a good welder told me. So I contacted the company. I'm like, look, man, this thing's a piece of junk if you ain't got wire speed. I can't weld thin walled tubing, stuff like that. So why don't you guys send me the plasma cutter and let me review that? Surely that thing's got to be nice, because, I mean, it's how easy is it to build a plasma cutter? I mean, they love this type of electronics, so you don't even need a transformer. And they told me they were low on stock. So I'm not doing this in retaliation. Once I realized how much of a piece of crap this was, and then that I had agreed to take time out of my day to review it, and then come to find out I don't even get a welder I can use out of the deal. So this isn't to knock them. I just go watch those other videos I was telling you about, like type in yes welder, and it's kind of comical. They love this thing. It's the best welder they've ever seen. The first hour of me owning this thing was me trying to find this little key right here that popped out. This little pin fell out, and I didn't even know it exists. So I put the welder back together like this, and this thing's just spinning because I didn't know it was in there or nothing. So for the first hour, I messed with this thing trying to get it to work. And the thing sits in here like this. So you're like all back in here trying to reach it. You can't reach it. The door's too small. So I was highly frustrated. And I ended up finding this pin lodged right inside the crack here. I seen this little key sitting there stuck in that metal. And I'm like, what the heck? And I got to looking at it. And that pretty much dawned on me that's got to be what the problem is. So this thing caused me so much headache that I really got to give you guys an F+ on this key. All right, so for all you guys who never intended to buy this piece of crap, I hope I at least made you laugh during the video. That's healthy. So, man, go do something. For real. It's been like 10 minutes, bro, and that you're never getting that back.